It's my great pleasure to welcome you all this evening to UCD. As you can see, I never stand behind the podium because nobody can see me when I stand behind the podium, unlike the Taoiseach there, who I'll be introducing shortly. So first of all, I just wanted to say a few words about where you are, because I think that's really relevant for the activities that all the young people have been involved in today. So this building is the Students' Centre for UCD, and it was paid for as a result of a referendum of students who decided that they were going to pay it forward and invest for students who would be coming along in years to come. And I think that showed great insight and great generosity on their part, that they were prepared to pay money towards something that they wouldn't get to access themselves. And I think that's really the spirit that we've been trying to encourage today. We've had 100 young people from all over the world looking at the problem of youth unemployment and what young people can do to tackle youth unemployment. So welcome again. I hope you enjoy the evening. It's my pleasure to introduce the US Embassy Chargé d'Affaires, Stuart Dwyer.
Thank you very much. I will use the podium. Before I say anything about tonight's event, I do want to thank the president of UCD, Hugh Brady, for the support his university has given to the U.S.-Irish relationship. From hosting the Clinton Institute to the long-standing commitment to the Fulbright program to the myriad partnerships that have been encouraged with U.S. academic institutions, I want to express our admiration and thanks. Taoiseach, Minister, and distinguished guests, I also want to recognize my own team for what I think, frankly, has been a pretty remarkable program they've put together. Such public praise for your own squad might seem a little unseemly, but since I arrived in Ireland just 3 weeks ago and can take absolutely no credit for this event, I think you can forgive me for that. Tonight's event came out of conversations that the U.S. Embassy had with members of the U.S. Embassy's Youth Council. The council was set up last December and launched by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Dublin during her last official visit as Secretary of State. She and Secretary Kerry after her have made youth engagement a permanent agenda item for all U.S. diplomatic missions. Our goal is to bring young leaders like you here today into the room and foster the kinds of conversations that inform answers to common challenges. And certainly, one of the most challenging issues is that of youth unemployment. When the U.S. Embassy started talking to young leaders here, they said the same thing that young people in Boston, or Chicago, or Dallas, or Detroit would say. How do we create opportunities for this generation to contribute its talent to building our common future? At a time of fragile growth, this is a big issue for us. It is a global issue, and progress will come through the actions of policymakers, business, universities, and local initiatives. At the end of the day, though, while others can help create the opportunities, it is up to you to seize them. And I have little doubt that the impressive group that is gathered here tonight will do just that. We have youth delegates here, many who are members of other U.S. Embassy youth councils from 14 countries, from the U.S. to Mali to Ukraine and Greece to South Africa. You represent an interconnected world that thrives on flexibility, inventiveness, creativity, and yes, innovation. Those ingredients can make for exciting opportunities. They can also be unsettling. For the path of the innovator is an uncertain one. You may try and fail. You may try again and fail. But you may try a third time and spark a revolution. The Taoiseach and I this morning were at the launch of Qualtrics, a Salt Lake City-based firm that has just opened its first overseas presence. Indeed, its first presence outside Utah, here in Dublin. We heard a familiar narrative from an innovative CEO who spoke passionately about his business that was launched in a basement 10 years ago, followed by lean years as the firm found its feet. Today, Qualtrics is listed among Forbes' 25 most promising firms in America, with $70 million in equity capital from VC, 350 employees, and growing rapidly. The revolution you spark may be a new business, it may be a policy solution to a long-standing problem, it may be a social entrepreneurship that delivers services in imaginative new ways. But whether you're going into government service, the nonprofit sector, or private enterprise, innovation is a skill set that you, as emerging leaders, need to acquire. And our hope is that this Innovation All-In event can be part of that process. I want to thank the IUSA Alumni Program for their support, Paul O'Connell, the president of the organization. I want to thank Liberty Insurance for sponsoring the Academy, and CEO Pat O'Brien. who understands innovation. I want to thank the almost 30 organizations and companies for hosting groups today. And finally, I want to thank the Taoiseach for joining us and speaking to the group today. Your leadership of a very successful EU presidency in which jobs and growth was the key theme was widely recognized. And in particular, I want to thank you for your stewardship of the incredibly rich and diverse partnership that is the US-Ireland relationship. As we were reminded again this morning, the dynamism of our relationship truly embodies the spirit of today's event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's now my great pleasure to invite the Taoiseach to the podium to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a bit daunting here. How many hands here are from Ireland? Somebody from home. How many from the United States? Britain? Gotcha. Mali, somebody else from Mali. Two ladies here. And Ukraine? Good. Europeans, European Union. We got Africa? Well, we got Mali. Australia? No? Too far this time. Okay. I was in another university last year, in Dublin City University actually, talking to 1,000 students there from age 14 to 20. And yet, this is one of the big things about politics, because politics is always about people. At the end of the day, if you're serious about your politics, you have to be serious about people, about their opportunities, about their chances, about the careers that you can create for them. Governments never create jobs, but if they listen carefully, they can work with people who have ideas, and you can open the doors for business and open the doors for that opportunity. So politicians who say, I created these jobs, I created it, that's not true. But if you're serious, you can create the atmosphere and the environment in which those opportunities can flourish. Example, when I was elected as Taoiseach 2.5 years ago, and for those of you from the great United States, Taoiseach means the Gaelic word for leader, or in the English translation in politics would be Prime Minister. Okay. When I was elected 2.5 years ago, the thing was, our country was locked out of the international financial markets. We had lost 250,000 jobs in 3 years in the private sector. Interest rates were 15%. And worse than all of that, we'd lost our integrity, our word, our trust, our reputation, and our cohesion as a nation. And I went to America very shortly after that, and I met the president of a very large financial institution, and I said, well, tell me, what would you do if you were in my shoes, facing an unprecedented economic calamity? He said, the first thing you have to do is show them that you're serious. So what we've had to do over this period have been to make serious decisions that have affected the lives and the lifestyle of our people and their careers and their opportunities. And that's not been easy. It's been very difficult for a great number of people. Equally so for others in Europe who have gone through and are going through difficult times. But remember this, since the 6th century, the people from this island have been travelling. Educators and missionaries who shone the light of education into places all over Europe, and for humanitarian reasons, and for reasons of war and battle, have fought the wars of other countries, have built the cities of other nations, and we've left our DNA imprint all over the globe, where we now have 70 million of a diaspora. Immigration was always a factor in our country, where young people, young lads and young girls left at 14 or 15 years of age, and some never came back. Some might have returned 40, 50 years later. So our people, as a people, understand that. And that's why 35 million Irish Americans signed their birth certificates as saying, I am Irish. I am descended of the Irish. They were my ancestors. And that goes back in the humanitarian sense to what happened here in the 1840s when our population was 8 million, and after the Great Famine, the Great Hunger, it was decimated between emigration and death, and the population was halved. So they went to Ellis Island, and they went to Grosse Ile, and they went to Australia, and they went to Britain, and all over the place. And they're there. That's why in this year of the gathering, we're great to have so many people from all over the world back here, because now you can tie them together digitally, and you know who they are, you know their experience, you know their range. They want to offer assistance to young people like yourselves coming behind. Because you see, the world that you're going to live in, that you are living in, that you will create in the next decade, is a world that is alien to us. Because the big jobs haven't been created yet, the names of those titles of jobs haven't been created yet, and the facilities that will be in everyday use in a decade have not been created yet. But they're in train, and some of them are in your minds. So if the next person here who's going to create Facebook is in the room, please put your hand up. So I'd like to say that when I joined the European Council, that is the leaders of the countries who are in the European Union, all 27, you sit around the table to put together a budget for the European Union from 2014 to 2020. That's of the order of 960 billion euro. One of the outstanding issues was that of youth unemployment, running at over 50% in Spain, 54% in Greece, and relative other proportions in between. And the young lady I was talking to in the hotel the other day from Spain said, well, there isn't anybody of my age in my town. They've gone. I'm a teacher, I'm now working in this hotel, and I look after children in the evening. And she said, the funny thing is that 13 more young women from Spain are in the same little town that she's in here in Ireland. And that's because they feel distraught in that they've had to leave their homes and their towns and their countries to travel elsewhere. And yet we've had the same with young people leaving our country, going to Australia and America and everywhere else. One of the things that we did do at the European Council was to put into that budget an 8 billion euro fund for youth unemployment, for dealing with programs for young people. And we asked the various agencies and the countries to come up with their programs before the end of October, November, so that this can take effect in January and from January. You see, in Austria, youth unemployment is about 3%. Because when a young boy or young girl decides to leave the second level system or the high school system and divert from formal education, they're given an apprenticeship or a training program or an opportunity to work in a career or a trade or a craft that they might like to do. And it's very well developed, as it is in Germany, and it's worked exceptionally well. So some countries in Europe have dealt with this very effectively, and they give young people the opportunity to follow their own dreams, as it were. In Ireland here, there's been a very strong inclination for so many years to be involved in education, because our minds, our young people's minds, are creative and they're imaginative, and that's what makes the difference when investors look at a country like this. So, when Stuart said this about the Qualtrics people this morning from Utah, young Ryan, who's the managing director and founder of the company, he said he came here to the Digital Summit in Dublin in 2012. He said he was blown away by the energy and the innovative forces coming out of that. And that's why he wanted to come back to a cosmopolitan place with young people who are charged up with actually creating the future. He's got 50 employed at the moment. He says inside the next 12 to 15 months, you will have 150 and beyond. He says, my problem is not tax. My problem is not a building. My problem is people. I need them. I need the very best. And I'm looking at them here. So whatever range you have, that's what it's going to be. I was down in Virtue Financials on John Rogerson's Quay down the city centre the other day with 70 young people down there who are involved in all the commodities and the stocks and the trading, exceptionally bright. They're going to quadruple their employment in the next 2 years, and they trade 6, 8, 10 billion every day. And they look at 10 machines and 10 screens together. Quite incredible. Out in Blanchardstown, in Dataflex, the big company in there from Canada, Continent 8, and it's all data content storage, taking in billions of pieces of information, using them and storing them for their client companies. While this doesn't bother you now, but I met the board of a major pharmaceutical company in the West the other day, and they've just invested 350 million in building another plant, and the plant they're building is to make Botox. None of you need Botox. There are a global supply of Botox coming out of Westport. The question is, how do you fix youth unemployment? How can you run an effective program? You have so many millions of young people, all that brains, all that talent wandering around, when you can focus their imaginative and creative proposals, you actually change the world. So when you look at the question of the supply of water, when you hear the president of the World Bank saying there will be wars fought over this inside 50 years, as there will. When you look at the jet stream changing, when you look at the Gulf Stream changing, if the Atlantic goes up by 0.5 degree, the entire salmon stock will move 1,000 miles north. All of that talent gone in the defence of king and country, or the defence of small nations, or whatever. So, from our point of view, what we try to do with the presidency of the European Union, see, every country holds the presidency for 6 months on a rotational basis. Won't be back in Ireland again for, I think, 14 years. But one of the things that we did try to do, which I've been at for a long time myself, was that we should form a relationship between Europe and the United States that is much stronger than it's ever been. And that is to put in place the mandate for trade, free trade between these two great trading blocs, the biggest trading blocs and the most powerful trading blocs on the planet. And in so doing, you can actually set down the standards for world trade for the next 30 or 40 years. So that whether if you make your iPhone in County Cork and you sell it in France and the intellectual property is vested in California, how do you do the taxation system that is fair and that is internationally acceptable to everybody? And that's why you now have the OECD and the different countries internationally looking at a situation where parliamentary legislation is very much behind the digital world as it applies in so many jurisdictions now. So one thing that we did do here, and at European level, was to put through the proposition that there be a youth guarantee scheme, that for young people who leave the education system would be given the opportunity to have a trade, to have an opportunity to follow courses leading to a trade, with a meaningful employment possibilities out of that. And that followed through. So, see, when you come into Dublin and you look to Google and to Dogpatch and the Foundry and SQS software and so many companies that are at the cutting edge of the digital world. It's fascinating actually when you go in there and feel the energy coming off all those young people and how they're walking away and creating new ideas. And in that sense, that's where we need to be, and that's creating the future. And that's the only place we have to live, is in the future. So, universities, colleges of technology, big companies, all engaging together, have a really important part to play in the development of our common humanity. What does everybody want to do? There are so many different things that people like to do. And yet, from an Irish perspective, what we want is to kind of give everybody the chance to be able to go about their work, whether it be from home or in a workplace, whether it be long distance or short distance, but to have an opportunity to develop their personal lives, their relationships lives, their family lives, their local economy, their region, and so on like that. And one thing that we've tried to do very, very strongly here in Ireland is the concept of what community and community power is. Now, I'm quite sure if you take a theme here or one or two issues and you were to say, okay, in 2 hours. I need 5 ideas coming out of this. I'm sure you get them. I'm sure some would be way out on the edge, and that may be the norm in a decade hence. Who knows? And that's the wonderful thing. I mean, I'm around long enough to know when we had telephones that had wind-up handles on them. And you had to ring up the telephone, first of all, to get through to the local exchange, which was half the size of the Empire State Building. And then the line would be very bad, and you'd hear people shouting into it. What did you say? And everybody else listened to everybody else's telephones. Apparently, they're still at that. I operate on the basis anyway that every phone call I make, there's somebody tuned in somewhere. I don't able to see them. And if I have to say something that might be important or not important, I speak as Gaelic here fond. And sometimes I actually say, if you're up there, well then we're going to roll with the kitchen as you need to get them around. Try that on for translation. So listen, I think the best thing we can do here is have an engagement of questions and answers, and insofar as I can attempt to answer your questions, I'll certainly try. I'd like you to know this good lady down here is Frances Fitzgerald. She's the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs in Ireland, and she's the first person to actually carry that responsibility at senior government level since the foundation of our state. And the reason that she was appointed to that position is that I believe in the primacy of our people. And our country went through a bad time, very bad reports about abuse of children and cover-up of various scandals over the years. And that's something that we have attempted to open up, lance that boil. And Frances Fitzgerald is actually responsible for having a referendum in the country, for putting into our constitution, by vote of the people, the fact that young people and children have rights themselves as individuals, and now they're recognised. So we're all on a common journey. There's no way off this treadmill until it ends, and until it does, as far as I'm concerned, my job, while you get this remit in politics, is to listen to people, to lead with a sense of courage, not to be afraid to take a risk where it's for the common good, and lead by example, be out front and say to young people, you are the future. I will work with you to help you create it to be a better place for everybody, whether you're in China, or Tierra del Fuego, or Alaska, or Sakhalin Island, or all points in between. And who knows, with curiosity on Mars, maybe there might be somebody else out there watching us as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And now we're very lucky because Taoiseach has agreed, very bravely I have to say, given the audience, to take questions from the audience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, to start with, for a few questions around youth unemployment. Then I'm going to ask for questions around, what was the second one? US-Irish relations. And the third one was innovation and entrepreneurship. Thank you for the prompt.
Who's first then?
We were discussing failure earlier in the day. And I'll tell you about that later. It did involve the first time we met, but we won't go into that. So, if I could take a couple of questions.
I hate the idea of potentially limiting people's ability to pursue their chosen careers, but taking education as an example, I did secondary teaching in UL. Should there be a greater link between industry and third level institutions so that they're not taking on extra numbers into college, whereby there's hundreds of teachers graduating every year to jobs that simply don't exist? So should there be that many actually allowed to enter into third level courses based off of that?
Okay, I'm going to take a couple more questions and then we'll answer them together. Another one from Cambodia.
It's been a great honor to be here with you all and with the with the Prime Minister. Well, I believe that one of the best way to solve the problem is to recognize that there is one. Well, in any, in less developed country, the root cause of youth unemployment will be people having a low education, at least less qualified one. But in the European country, like people in the EU will get set to, let's say, one of the most high quality education in the world. But why youth unemployment here still exists in this country? So my question is that, would you mind telling, sharing your insight, what are the root causes of the youth unemployment here in Ireland, and probably your world view on how we can tackle those problems worldwide? That would be appreciated. Thank you.
One more.
Is yes, there should be far more interaction. Should you limit the number of courses? Well, they're limited in fact in many ways. Some people obviously go into third level and they take on courses. The extent of dropout could be 50-60%. Young people find that the course is not for them, might be too difficult, might be not what they wanted, and they have the opportunity to change based on their leaving cert qualifications and so on. I think at the end of the day, if somebody signs up for course X and leaves and does something else, it's their choice. The thing that I would say about Ireland and our young people over the last 20 years in particular is their level of confidence. Because I've seen young people from this country well able to command with their peers on any stage around the world. And I think that's something that comes both from their parental background but also from the education system. So I agree with you. And the gentleman from Cambodia, well, first of all, the birth rate in Ireland has been very high. We have the best demographics of any country in Europe for the next 35 years. For generations, our country here was almost strictly Irish, with very few international people here. That's all changed in the last 20 years. And you have 40, 50 different languages being spoken in various places around the country. And that's a contribution that other people have made to our country, to our economy, but also to the engagement with our people. That's one factor. Birth rate has been very high. Secondly, clearly, low level of education applies where obviously the economics of the country are not good. We've always had this here for very many years. Our country was known for centuries as the island of saints and scholars because of the many universities and monasteries that were set up well over 1,000 years ago. The manuscripts of many of these places are locked in various monasteries and castles all over Europe, many of them held in some of the archives of the universities here. So it is a case of looking at the scale of the problem, how many young people, we know those who are born now, what is the concept of preschool education, get them into the first level, second level, and let them fly to their chosen career after that. It does require a pretty significant investment, and it requires three things in my view. A good family home environment, obviously an educational system that is broad-ranging and able to cater for diverse levels of ability, and then that you have to be able to cater for those, unfortunately, who fall by the wayside, be it because of family circumstances, be it because of any other breakaways, because of personal problems that people might have. I think in the changing workforce. What was your question again? You said that, did you?
Sorry, it was the changing workplace, like the fact that we're a lot more reliant on technology and the jobs.
Yes, and that's not true. Listen, this is a fact of life. We've only begun to catch up with the broadband capacity in the country here. The government, of which I lead, had to put in place a pretty significant national plan to get broadband out around the country. Many of the schools were not connected. Now that's moving very rapidly. There, I think, have been 400 or 500 connected to adequate broadband in the past period. But then you have to have a level of proficiency and training for teachers to work with their pupils In fact, in many schools, the young people coming in are far more adept at doing these things than many of the teachers. We have the explosion of quarter dojos around the country. Lots of company leaders go into places and they give mentoring free for Saturdays or half Saturdays. You have a lot of voluntary capacity going on in a world that's changing rapidly. The answer to your question is we are not as adequate as we should be in the level of training and the proficiency of our people to deal with this. It's always, parents will say to me, what should my son or daughter study in second level school? What subjects should they take? And that's why I suppose one of the advantages of the digital world is that, let's say in schools where you didn't have the capacity or the numbers of pupils to do, let's say, honours mathematics or honours physics, that now you can have that streamed from another school where this is being taught, and pupils can learn remotely because you don't have the numbers of pupils in a school or the numbers of teachers, you don't get the range within the curriculum, and all that's changing. It's to tie it together. The Leaving Certificate results, which is the exit in our country here from second level school, does show an increasing awareness of young boys and young girls to identify careers where there will be opportunities for them up ahead. But then it's always difficult. So we have to work at this continuously to be up to speed.
Thank you, and I think a good point to follow on from there is the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. If a couple of people would like to ask questions about innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay, I would like to talk about immigration. If young people who immigrated in Ireland here, if we can have the same opportunities to get job as Irish people. If it depends of their innovation or their competencies, to have the same equality of chance to have job here in Ireland.
Two more questions?
Taoiseach, what would your definition be of innovation, and how do you think the government can remove any potential limitations that might be there for young Irish people and indeed young people around the world to be innovators?
One more.
David Taoiseach agus Gurmal a good Taoiseach Taoiseach in Ireland. You touched on 3 points in your remarks. One was to recognise the presence of young people from developing countries here with us tonight. The second was on EU-US trade and agreements around that. And the third was the sense of community. Given that intellectual property rights and their safeguarding are undeniably important to reward innovation and to recognise it, will Ireland, or should Ireland, be a leading voice in trying to ensure that further trade agreements, whether they're trans-Pacific or transatlantic, to ironclad those intellectual property rights, do not come at the expense of denying essential medicines to people in the developing world?
The question from the young lady from Mali, if I gathered it correctly, was: do you have to have? Does a job depend upon innovation capacity here? It doesn't. No. Obviously, it's an advantage if a young person has ability to deal with the modern digital world. It doesn't depend upon it, but certainly obviously not everybody can be a PhD or a master's, not everybody can be an electronics engineer or a physician, but everybody's got a talent and there's a position for everybody. But it's to run your country effectively, to have the economy running smoothly, that money is not wasted, and that you look after those who are vulnerable in society, and at the same time open the doors for those who have ideas, whether it's selling online or whether it's creating something new and innovative. And the definition, I suppose, is innovate. Nova is to create something new that's not been there before. It might be something radically different. It might be an extension of something that's already there, a new idea. It might be a discovery. it might be discovery on the side, as it were, of trying to do a particular project. So my definition of innovation is to create a new way, a new method, a new product, a new system that's not been there before, but that's of benefit in the general run of affairs. And we have evidence of that in centres like this here. That's why this kind of centre is so crucial, really so crucial, for the new days that are coming. And the gentleman who asked the question about Australia, about developing countries and so on. Yes, I agree. It is absolutely fundamental that we understand our interdependence and our interconnection. That's why the location of this country geographically in the global flux of waters on the planet is far more crucial. More was that the GA should look at the provision of competent and experienced people in taxation matters, in legal matters, in mineral rights, and all of these things, to see that where exploration takes place and fines are made, that when deals are done and contracts signed, that there's a benefit for the local populations in wherever country that might be. Now, I had the privilege of meeting Bill Gates some time ago. He came into government buildings, and when you think that the foundation that he's put in place will lick one of the most horrendous diseases on the planet in our history in the next 4 years, it's an astonishing fact that when people actually get together and work together in the common interests of defeating an objective or achieving an objective, defeating a disease, that it can happen. Now, we, as a very small country here, we would have a disproportionate impact on humanitarian relief, whether it be in Haiti, or whether it be in Indonesia, or whether it be in the Lebanon or Syria. You're going to find the Irish there because that's part of our DNA, as you well know. So I believe that the trade agreements that are put in place should safeguard those issues for the benefit of the peoples of the countries that they're expected to serve, and not have corrupt regimes or billions diverted for personal wealth and personal gain. This is about living a life and having the opportunity to live that life. And insofar as we can reflect that in trade agreements that we make, that's what we do.
Thank you, and that leads on nicely to US-Irish relations. Who has questions on US-Irish relations?
Hi, I'm Taoiseach. My name is David Tansey. I'm a final year medical student at UCD here. This isn't actually related to US-Irish relations, but no, but it's just to follow on from some of the sessions we were having today. We were at the Higher Education Authority earlier on. We were learning about the various programs that the government has put in place to reskill and upskill the unemployed people from various industries such as construction. And in relation to the public service, I was interested I am interested to know of any plans to sort of upskill and redeploy public servants where there might be areas that they're overstaffed, and redeploying them to areas where their skills could be better utilised, and making a leaner, more efficient public service, while obviously minimising the amount of redundancies going forward.
In the spirit of the evening, does anybody have any question about anything that they would like to ask the Taoiseach? Rís an tí gur míle mágad fa sucht ba linn ach go háirithe a sucht chora a bheith linn. I'm particularly grateful to you for speaking to us, but also for allowing us to speak with you. And we've spoken a lot today about progress and innovation, particularly digital, and so you said yourself our speed of progress has accelerated, and the speed of it is extraordinary. And in your experience, whether that's the length of breath of Ireland or internationally, is there anything that you would urge us as we move forward to hold on to? Are there values that as we flash through and soar through these innovations, that you would urge and encourage us to hold fast to?
Mr. Prime Minister, I don't know how to say in Irish anything. Speaking of diversity, I'm Swedish. My question is, you being the head of European Council, or having an influence, and you mentioned that there's a lot of investment right now on youth unemployment. There's a bigger issue as well within youth unemployment, particularly minorities that come to Europe that have various skills. They are children of immigrants like myself, but because of their name or culture, they are not visible in these policies as much as they could be. And as we know, Europe is having crisis, and the first thing that the natives look at as soon as crisis hits is, who are these people that we are paying for everything? You know, we become the black sheep, if you want to say it. So my question is the European Union and with the leadership of Ireland, will there be more focus on minorities when it comes to this budget that you guys are working on right now?
Okay, David asked a question about the construction industry, the public service here. Yes, on the live register at the moment, that is the register of people who are unemployed, some of who work part-time. As I said, we lost 250,000 jobs in 3 years. 80,000 of those currently on the live register were involved in the construction sector in one point or another. Government expects to spend 12.5 billion on a public capital programme between here and 2015. This involves roads and primary care centres for health and schools and so on like that, which will involve thousands of jobs. So we require that there be social clauses put in there. 10% of the workforce is taken on will come from the live register, mostly of people who have competence and experience in that business already. In respect of the public service, we've reduced it in this country by 36,000, and one of the issues was to, upgrade the computer systems and the electronic capacity to pay checks centrally. Instead of having to write everything down for all the application forms and the notifications, so much more can be done. And there's a very strong programme of opportunity for public servants to work from department to department, or from department to the private sector, to do courses, to be upskilled, and to involve themselves in a far more efficient, far more professional, far more up-to-date system of doing things. And we've done a great deal of that in the past. It's still not what it should be in many areas, but I can tell you there's a great deal of work going on there. In fact, in part of the reconstruction of the public service over the last 12 months, I have to say that the group which has dealt with the reform of the way the public service does its business here have laid out an exceptionally good plan for the future. And that's been assisted greatly by expertise that came into the public service from the private sector, that would have management skills, that would have efficiency skills, that would have achieving objective skills in there. And I'm very hopeful that in the next number of years, the people will see the big change that's coming in that regard out of all of that. You asked the question about citizenship. This is very true, and about the minority rights. It's a good question. The population of Africa will double in the next 20 years. If 10% of young males from Africa were to decide to emigrate from Africa and come to Europe, no country in Europe could withstand that pressure. So therefore it's in Europe's interest and the world's interest that Africa as a continent of massive potential be allowed to develop in the way that we would like to see that happen. And that means that in particular countries, the question of corruption has to be dealt with, and democracy introduced, and all of that, to allow for education systems for men and women, for the massive potential in the agri-sector that Africa has, with its potential to feed the world literally, where we have no concept of the distances that apply in that great continent. And from that point of view, minority rights in Europe have always been an issue. In this country here, we've changed the system. Let's say that somebody comes here and is here for a number of years and wants to become a citizen. What used to apply was that that person would have to go down to the district court, and in the course of people's cases being heard in the district court, would have to say, I'm here to apply for citizenship. And there was a very big backlog of 30,000 backed up. So we changed all that system and bring all those people together with a sense of excitement and there was a famous tune they used to sing called Old Men, and it was, if you remember the lines, what time it was and what a time it was, a time of innocence, long ago, it must be long ago, I have a photograph. Preserve your memories, they're all that's left to you. Bring those with you too.
And I think we should all have great respect for the Taoiseach for giving of his time. Another failure. For giving of his time so generously this evening. Everybody, big round of applause. To invite Professor Paul O'Connor to the podium as he has a special award.
Taoiseach, Dr. Brady, Chargé d'Affaires Noir, Professor Janice, delegates, guests, ladies and gentlemen. On this, the occasion of Taoiseach Enda Kenny's keynote address, it gives me great pleasure as President of the Ireland-United States Alumni Association to present him as an alumnus of the US State Department's International Visitor Leadership Program with the association's Prominent Alumni Lecture Series Medal, and to express our gratitude to him for his fine contribution to this evening's proceedings. So, Taoiseach, might I now present you.
Did you lose something?